Yes. Correct. Absolutely. I would say so. Mm. Four scores. Yep. I'm not too far behind you. Yeah. You want me to read the memory verse? All right. And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Write, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yea, said the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors and their works do follow them. Revelation 14, verse 13. Yes. Janet. Yeah. Still running circles around all of us. Yeah. They don't make them like that anymore.
Here, now it's green.
Okay. I promise I didn't touch it. Maybe I did when I pushed it down on there. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that we have to ponder, don't we? That we save up, our resources thinking that we're going to have to go into a nursing home because people are living longer these days. And then the nursing home, of course, how expensive that is to take everything that you've saved. And so, there's little left over for our posterity. They say you should have a will, and you should, first of all, give, to the church accordingly, and then leave what's left to your children if you have children. But the unknown factor is the nursing home these days, because it takes all of the resources and more beyond. Then they'll take your home.
Yeah, they eliminate everything first, and then you're allowed to go in.
Yeah.
But even for like the people that are going through that situation, that's stressful enough for them. But for the parent, I mean, like the younger group that's here, they seen your parents go into that realm or tiptoeing around that door. You're kind of figuring out, well, 10 years from now, what do we do? Are we supposed to help them, or do we start guiding them now? And then you start seeing them making decisions with their money. You're like, I don't think that's wise, but we can't be there yet to tell them, hey, don't do that. So it's kind of hard for us to not be stressed out by what's to come. My mom is, well, I won't say her age, but she's coming up to that door where she's now the monarch for the family, for her side of the family. And that transition when her mom passed away, she said that was very tough for her because she never realized that once she's gone, like, she's in charge of the family now, and now she's at that age where she has to start thinking about retirement and what she can do here, making decisions. And it's hard, especially with disabilities and ailments. She has seizures, and like that's very overwhelming at times. So.
And that phenomenon of nursing homes, I mean, it's only been within the last probably, I'll say 100 years.
Yeah.
That nursing homes have become, the main concern, because in biblical times and beyond, who took care of you? Family took care of you. Yes.
Yeah, so speaking of that, my grandparents on my mom's side, that is exactly what we did.
Yeah.
Because, now I understand there are some circumstances where it is better for the person to be in a facility.
Yes.
My grandfather did have dementia, along with some other health issues. My grandmother ended up developing Guillain-Barré disease from a flu vaccine, and then from that point on, her kidneys failed. It just went downhill. She was able to give the care to my grandfather that he needed,
Right.
but then, well, they both needed care.
Yeah.
They had a very large sum of money in their bank account. Yes, we could have put them in a nursing home,
Mhm.
but there was 5 children and there was like 15 grandchildren. We all decided, because we knew that if we did that to them, it was just our upbringing. That's
Yeah.
just what you did.
Right.
So we kept them at home, put hospital beds in their living room,
Mhm.
side by side,
Yeah.
and we took turns.
Yeah.
And then we did pay one person to come in.
Come in, yeah.
And then we had, different nursing facilities, they'd come in, do what they needed to do, but we were able to do that as a family until they passed,
Yeah.
which, for my grandmother, that was about a year.
Mhm.
After my grandmother died, it was exactly almost to the day, 2 months.
Well,
He went, but his was because of a broken heart.
Yeah.
So, and that, we were just taught to do that.
Mhm.
But in today's time, everybody's so busy, nobody,
Right.
and I see more selfishness, more, oh, I don't wanna give up my time,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and both people are working
Yeah,
today, and so.
which everybody was, but as a community, we were able to do it.
Yeah,
But one person can't do it,
right.
2 people can't do it, 3, it takes a
it takes a
community.
cleat,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, what's the second concern with all this after the threat of a nursing home? And I guess I'm thinking of, I was the major breadwinner. My wife worked and she's the lesser breadwinner. Well, what if something happened to me?
yeah.
Right.
What do we do with our
Yeah.
finances? How
Yeah,
do we?
I mean, it goes,
Downhill quick.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, she's got enough to live on, but not to the state where we are today. And so that's an adjustment that would have to be made.
And I think that comes back to being content too in what you have and
Yeah.
realizing that if, as me and Frank we have great conversations a lot of times, but realizing that everything is God's. And I
yes,
think
the first
a few years back, so I never really thought of it like that. Like, I worked for this, I did this, I did that, I got this car, I got this house.
Right.
Like, and now once you realize that this is all God, it's all gonna burn up. Like that's what Frank said, it's all gonna burn up.
And I guess that's where faith comes in.
Yeah,
You have
it's-
to have faith that, like that song goes, God will take care of you.
Yeah.
Right?
Like the birds, they don't look for a house. They don't
Right.
They're not going around trying to stock up on
That's right.
wood and stuff like that to find a house. God provides for them. Yeah, they're not looking for toilet paper and stuff like that. They find whatever they can. But what you're talking about as far as retirement, it's kind of funny. My sister, God bless her, she has 6 kids. I don't know how she does it. But her retirement plan is, I have 6 kids, so I'm just rotate with them every 2 months. I'm going to rotate and live with them. So I was like, oh man, I hope it works out for her.
They were aiming for a baseball team.
Yeah, she's almost there.
Well, if we survive our savings, Hebrews 9 and Ecclesiastes 9 say much about the same thing about death, don't they? As Revelation 14 that Will read there. It says, and it is appointed unto men what? Once to die. Right? That's assuming that Jesus doesn't come first. But after this, the judgment. And Ecclesiastes 9 says, for the living know that they shall what? But the dead know not anything, neither have they any more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. So I guess we should move on to the rich fool.
Yep, I'm turning Luke now, I'll read it.
Yeah.
Luke
It's
12.
a relevant message there for us, isn't it?
It's,
The rich fool. Want me to read that one?
Yeah.
All right, so the rich fool, Luke chapter 12, 16, verse 21 reads, I'm reading the NIV Bible as Frank calls it the Jesuit Bible. You can read it in your own Bible, words may be a little bit different. That's what he calls it, the Jesuit Bible. King James Version kind of gets me confused a little bit. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I will tear tear down my barns and build a bigger one. And then I will store up my surplus again. And I will say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God.
I'm glad you weren't reading from the Revised Non-Standard.
I forget where it was in the, I think it was in this lesson where you talked about the rich guy. He said the only way I'll know that I lived my life right is when I die and I write my check for the funeral, it bounces.
Yeah, I read that.
And I read that, I was like, wow.
Yeah,
I was like, wow, that's,
pessimistic view.
yeah, that's a very, very terrible view.
Well, what struck you odd about the passage in the Bible about the rich fool? Of course,
If he had been thinking about how he could have blessed God's kingdom, maybe God might have changed that, but he was thinking about how he could bless his kingdom. And I think that anytime that we begin to do that, it's, you see politicians that have the I problem.
yeah, right.
You know, it's, look what I did, and I, instead of, it's the taxpayers, and it's the public safety people, and it's those people who are.
Right. Well, Luke, the evangelist, he doesn't give the name of this individual, fortunately, the rich fool. But Jesus gave a very short, succinct answer to that man, didn't he? He said, who made me a judge or divider? You know, they were looking for wisdom coming from the master on this man sharing with his brother. And Jesus was not about to go into that small.
Do you think Jesus was urging him to listen to his conscience? Because he probably had these thoughts in the back of his head, and, you know, it's like, well, I have to build my kingdom first before I can worry about God's kingdom, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think God was, or Jesus was trying to,
Right.
you know, I know the Spirit's been talking to you, it's like, maybe you should listen.
Well, how often we do that in our own lives? We say, oh, well, if I had that extra truck or that trailer, oh, I'd make so much money with that thing. I could help out a lot of people. And you get that same truck or trailer, you're like, you know what? That trailer's kind of big. I need a bigger truck now to carry that trailer. You never stop. There's never a line in the sand where you say, this is enough. There's always, human nature, there's always more.
The Bible says, I will tear all these barns down
And build bigger, yeah. And it's,
And then a
so,
tornado comes and knocks it all down.
yeah.
when you get the insurance money, look for something bigger.
Did you get the connotation there that this one brother, he was probably the executor of the state?
Hmm.
The state, you read that between the lines, and he's not sharing with his brother. You know, in other words, he's skimming it off the top, you know, and not really, you know, giving what his brother is due. And he was complaining to the master about that. I think it's more than a parable. I think it was a real life situation. Sometimes Jesus turns them into parables. And in his effort to veil the identity, he just doesn't name the person.
Right.
But I don't think it was one of the disciples, because it would have said, you know, a disciple,
Yeah.
you know, or something like
It's
that.
like the story with David where he said, the man's you. And this, he just avoided that context in this one.
Right.
But how often have we seen like money enter people's lives and completely ruin their life?
Yeah.
Like we always say, oh man, I wish I hit the lottery. Well, you have to play to win. But I mean, we always say, oh, I would love to have that money. I'd like to have that, but God doesn't allow that to happen. But we never really see the whole backstory of why God eliminated that. But
I
see
turn
so
that
many.
around, you gotta play to lose.
Yeah, you got to there you go. That's a good one. But I see so many times people get money and stuff like that, and they go into bankrupt. I've seen jump off of a 40-story building because they had too much money in the bank. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
But we look back, we look over their life like, why would you do that? But we have no idea the struggles that came along with that. I mean, trying to maintain that lifestyle, that image, and all that stuff. It all came back to I.
Fighting to keep you from stealing.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
What's interesting in that parable is the words I and mine.
Mm-hmm.
They appear 10 times. You know, so he did have an I problem, he had an ego problem, besides, you know, the selfishness and the covetousness that overwhelmed him. So the person who desires wealth is tempted to make its acquisition a top priority. And if we don't have our priorities straight, we're going to go off the beaten path. And we are all tempted to believe that we can find the true security in wealth. Faith in wealth crowds out faith in God. It is not money that is the problem, but the love of money. That's what the Bible says, 1 Timothy 6:10. And because we don't know the day of our death, we should always live as though today is the last day of our lives, right? But plan as though we're going to live forever, right?
Correct.
That's a good motto. Well, I suppose we should move on. What do you think, Will?
Going to Monday?
Yeah.
All right.
You can't take it with you. Boy, that's a...
You can try.
The Egyptians tried and it didn't work.
I think of the
Look at all the
story.
gold they're buried with.
Yeah, I think of the story where this man died, and I know you can't take anything to heaven with you, but he loaded all his money up and he carried it to heaven. And when he got to the pearly gates, St. Peter said, well, you can come in, but what do you got in the bag? He said, oh, I got all my money in the bag. He said, well, you won't need it up here. The streets are paved with gold. Powerful lesson, right? Money's worthless up there. So you did all this for nothing.
Yeah. Once you put the perspective that monetary value is only worth anything here,
Yeah.
and it's really not worth anything here. If you start digging deep, it's really not worth anything besides the paper it's printed on. But the idea of money is only worth.
It's interesting, I don't know if you saw on the news that the computer bank out in California just went bankrupt and
Oh,
they had
yeah.
a run on it and everything, and
People standing in
I
line.
believe that this is the beginning of the
It's coming.
financial crash that is gonna bring the Sunday law in.
Yeah.
So
So that was a
these
what,
people
savings
that-
and loan?
Yeah, it was a huge, I mean, it wasn't like a Chase
So it
Bank or anything,
probably
but
wasn't-
it was one of the bigger investment
Right.
banks.
So it probably wasn't protected by the
Like
FDIC.
Probably wasn't, but it, like I say, they had started having a run, and then when they tried to they didn't have the money to cover it, so they tried to get a loan, and everybody's, no, you're radioactive, and so they went down.
Yeah. Like those poor people standing in line.
Correct. And they all think all those people now, they're like going through financial ruins like that
Yeah.
over money.
Right.
Just,
Yeah, everything's gone.
ugh.
Well, the old adage, you can't take it with you, that's true. Nothing more truer than that.
Yep.
We can't take material things out of this world. What can we take out of this
Our
world?
Character?
Our character. Yeah.
Just us,
Our what?
just
Oh,
ourselves.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, our personality, our character. We'll be known in heaven as we are known here,
Yeah,
you know, through our,
if we're loving and kind and all
Well,
that,
that plus
then they'll
the way
be
you
glad to see us.
talk, you know, you'll be known in heaven through your personality.
Yeah,
And I think it's gonna be your true spirit, because unfortunately, we allow evil spirits to take over our tongues sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think God will allow our true nature to be present, not the faults that we have.
But for us as Christians, we have the hope, don't we?
Yes.
The hope of the first resurrection,
Yeah.
and not to have part in the second. And as the preacher once said, when we get to heaven, two things will amaze me. One, that I'm there,
yeah,
and two, that somebody was there that I didn't think would be there.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right? Those two things.
I'm going straight to the buffet.
Oh,
That's why I'm headed straight to the buffet.
The important thing to remember while we are alive is, one, to have a will. I know I'm probably stepping on some toes here.
Mhm.
Because not everybody has a will.
Yeah, it does.
Who does?
She has me.
Oh, your will. And two, a plan for giving to God's cause after our death, which a lot of us need to bone up on that. Because that's something we need to consider. The only thing we can take from this life is our character, as we said. And hopefully, we have nurtured it and made it our life study to be worth something of value. Right? That we can be proud of. Well, what about Tuesday's lesson, Will?
Tuesday's lesson.
begin with personal needs. Well, I guess, is that a selfish way of looking at it? Begin with personal needs?
Sometimes we misinterpret that and say personal wants.
Yeah, instead of needs.
No, take care of what you need to have.
Yeah. Jesus says, yeah, I know you need
Take
clothes
care of
and food
yourself
and
so
all
you'll
that.
be healthy and
Seek-
strong.
Seek first the kingdom of God.
And all the other things will be.
Will fall in place. I think a lot of times we want to be successful, but unfortunately our human mind interprets success as the world does, which is financial. I have the nicest car, or I have the nicest house, or
Right.
I have the new siding on my house. Look at these new LED lights. They're all like, that is our concept of success versus looking around us, looking at all the people we've helped, seeing our kids being grounded in God, where somebody says, oh my God, they're like, oh, they just took the Lord's name in vain. Like, that's success. Those little small moments you see a child realize that, okay, they offended God. This is like, those are success marks. And
And nothing is more evident than around Christmas time, as you see.
Oh, yeah.
They try to outdo one another with
Oh, gosh.
lights and displays and things.
oh yeah, the neighborhood challenger, they have this lights, this, ours are bigger, ours shine in their house.
Yeah,
But even Christmas time, you think about gifts and stuff like that, oh, I want to give the best gift.
Yeah.
I want to do, and the nature of giving is not there. It's a matter of, I want to be seen as the superior giver. And it's unfortunate that our society
well,
has been-
contrary to popular belief, the Bible never condemns accruing wealth.
No, it does not.
I mean, as long as it's accrued honestly.
Honestly,
Yeah, that's the thing that we must remember, accrue it honestly. Estate planning with wills and trusts are part of the process, because if you don't have a will, most civil authorities will intervene, and they'll pass your assets on to your relatives if you have them. If you don't, the state will take it. And so, you know, you're left without. But the Bible and the wisest man ever lived was Solomon. And he said this, life is like a vapor, appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away.
Yes.
Nothing more truer than that. And, you know, 70 years or 80, or in Millie's case, 90, you know, it's like a vapor in that whole scheme of things.
I was going to read the Proverbs. How would you interpret, be diligent to know the state of your flock? I'll read this. Know well the condition of your flock and give attention to your herds. For riches do not last forever, and does a crown endure to all generations. When the grass is gone and the new groweth appear, and the vegetation of the mountain is gathered, the lambs will provide their clothing, and the goats the price of a field. There will be enough goats' milk for your food, for the food of your household, maintenance for your girls. I thought it was really interesting talking about your flock and stuff like that. So I think about all business owners and stuff like that. Like, we own a business, we have employees that support, really they support us at the end of the day. How often do we take the time to look at them and say, hey,
Yeah.
how are you doing? What's going on in your life? Because when they work more efficiently, it comes back around. And a lot of companies don't take that time to invest in their employees. It's a matter of bottom line, make my profit or you're gone.
Yeah.
Versus taking that extra initiative to make sure your well-being of your flock. I mean, a lot of us don't have farms or anything today, but you have to translate that into today's time. And then also trampling over the poor. We see that all the time now. It's unfortunate. It says, however much the Bible warns against the rich trampling on the poor, being greedy with their wealth. Scripture never condemns wealth or people's efforts to acquire wealth, provided, of course, they don't do it dishonestly or through oppressing others. In fact, the text for today, Proverbs, indicates that we should be diligent in our financial affairs in order that we may have enough for ourselves and our families. And our family is not just limited to our household. What you do with the extra profits and proceeds, donations, helping poor, putting clothes on people's back, there's so many things that are done. And there are companies that do that do it behind the scenes. I'm not saying condemning all companies that make profit, but
Well, it is a dog-eat-dog world, isn't
yes,
it? I mean,
absolutely.
you know, out there in the jungle, you know, people will step on you to get ahead. I mean, if you work in the private sector, I know you've all experienced that one time or another, because there's people that, you know, their total motive is to get ahead.
You don't top that ladder, no matter who's going to climb up, they'll climb right over your back, right over top of that.
That's right.
Yep.
So Well, I guess we can move on with deaf bed charity.
That was interesting, like,
Here we are again with the word deaf. Well, money can have a powerful stranglehold on us if we're not, in tune with God and His message. And it can bring us down to ruin if we're not in the right state of mind. In the context of being a good steward, one danger we face is a temptation to hoard assets. And why would we do that? Well, I mentioned before, we want to save so that when we get old, like in my case, or Millie's case, we can have enough to pay the nursing home. Or if they, like Penny said, you take care of your family, you can share that wealth with them. Either way.
I find it very interesting in today's society because some of the older generation, they went through the Great Depression. They saw things where, as you were telling me the story, that you were hoping that a train went by and they would throw a piece of coal at you.
A piece of coal, it was like.
Yeah, you collect coal just to heat your food and stuff
I
like
think
that.
that's where the term penny pincher.
Yeah. But I mean, there are some people that actually live through that. They're still, well, they're up in age, but I understand where their mindset of keeping everything, hoarding, that makes sense because that's the time they came through. But now with this new generation, they don't hold on to anything. As soon as they get 2 pennies, they spend it on something stupid. They have no money in their bank account. They have no.
Yeah.
There's a lot of there's always the exception, but there's a lot of kids that they have no idea how to manage money.
Yeah.
Nothing. As soon as they get it, it's gone. So like eventually, there's going to be some issues in 20 years from now when there's no money managers or any. They rely on the state. They rely on the government to provide everything to them and stuff like that. It's very interesting to see how it's going to turn out.
Well,
what were you saying? Go ahead.
Ann?
Oh, yeah, so, one of the main reasons our family decided, well, to do it was for the well-being of our grandparents. Because my grandfather had worked so hard all of his life. At some points, he worked 3 jobs to provide for his family. And if you can't already tell, like, they're so dear in my heart. It was always a very loving environment and supportive. That the family always congregated there. We always had family functions together. It was constant. So it was to give them this respect and to honor them.
Family was important.
Yes. So that way, the last parts of their lives could be as comfortable and surrounded by family as much as we could. It really wasn't about money. It was mostly about just respecting them because we loved them.
And that was the fruit of his harvest. The whole time that he was alive doing all those things, he was harvesting, tilling the ground, and eventually you guys were the fruit. So eventually when he's no longer till that ground, you guys are the fruit that came forth that would help him. So it just, once again, goes back to the farming thing again, is that we have to till that ground and start nurturing everything like that, because eventually it can come back around like that where you have families willing to take care of you.
I mean, they did grow up in the Depression, and my pap was in World War II.
Wow. And
I have his letters that he wrote home. He was raised by his grandmother, and he would send his money, his paycheck, to her.
Wow.
And it was just, he took care of family.
Well, those that
Different,
went,
I'd say
those
that's
that
a
went
different
through
time.
the Depression, of course, a lot of them are dead, long since. But it instilled in them, the reality of life and the fragility of life, really. And to be able to save a few pennies here and there. I mean, during that stretch, they gave out, gas stamps and food stamps and things like that, because people needed that resources. Well, that was a handout. I mean, yeah, you had to pay a little something for it, but it was, a handout by the government to keep people sustained through their livelihood. And I don't know. I mean, now we're almost going back to that.
Yeah.
With the government.
As a younger generation, we never saw, I'll call you a second, we never really saw that aspect of, I remember people saying they're line for gas, and by your last name, you go on certain days.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I
That's,
did
and
tags.
that's a figment of my imagination. I'm like, okay, great, sure.
Right.
Just like you walk to school in 4 feet of snow backwards.
It's coming again.
But then I'm looking at it through this whole COVID stuff that occurred, like, you saw how drastic
Yep.
and quick. Like, I mean, if you think about it, within 2 months,
2 weeks, 3 months.
we were hoarding toilet paper and hand sanitizer.
Waiting for it.
Yeah, it's kind of, I see the lines looking around for toilet paper, like, that's just, I mean, just to see, I would never thought a month ahead of time that we would ever be doing that, but yet we found ourselves. Yeah, we found ourselves in
Usually
lines
it's
for
bread,
toilet paper.
milk and bread.
Yeah.
But not toilet.
It was just, it's very fascinating how quickly we were able to, I don't want to say give up on God, like, we were so easy to transition to, I need a self-sustain mode versus realizing God's got this. I mean, look how many people are around us that did not get sick and stuff like that. It's incredible that if you look in the church about how many people did not get sick versus outside the world, you hear about people dropping dead all the time. It's just interesting how quickly we gave up on that. So be mindful of that next time it comes around, which will be soon, I'm sure.
Well, we don't want to wait till, we're on our deathbed.
Right.
Dispense of our resources.
Right.
Because Christ requires of his followers to not be, that way, not be, wait until we're, one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel to take care of our resources.
Go ahead, Frank.
I
Yes,
think a great example of that is Dorcas. She
Yeah.
made her life such a blessing to people that
Who was that?
Dorcas,
Yeah.
in the Bible,
Oh.
she knitted clothes and did things for people. I mean, she lived like a pauper herself, but she
That
blessed.
wasn't her
every-
right name. What was her right name?
I don't recall.
It escapes me right now.
But she died and the people went to Peter and said, what do we do, and Peter,
Yeah.
resurrected her
Yeah.
because she
Doing
was.
good work.
She was doing such a good work for God that, you think about how God looks at those things.
Yeah.
She was like a Mother Teresa or some of those kind of people that you've seen that, they didn't have 5 cents in their pocket, but every 5 cents they had, they found a way to bless somebody with it.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever seen the videos of homeless people, like, they'll give them like $100 to kind of
Yeah.
hide and give them cameras on them? You see them go around, like, hand out money to all the other homeless people. I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
just to think about, like, that concept that this person has nothing. You've given them everything to them, $100, and they're willing to give it away to other people to survive. Like, if we had that mindset, all the people that we store money in the bank, we're looking at
Yes.
all the zeros in our bank account.
Yeah, we wouldn't have to beg for offerings from the pulpit,
Yeah,
it would be like in the days of the sanctuary, it's like, we got enough.
Yeah, we have enough,
Find
close it up,
someplace
yeah,
else
find
to do
someone-
with your money.
exactly.
It's like,
Yeah. That's exactly right.
I think it was in Wednesday's lesson, we was talking about being like a living executor of your estate. which-
Yeah.
That kind of caught me off guard, because
It
it
did me
made me
too.
feel like I'm in charge of what's gonna happen. And I think what they meant to, how they meant to transcend that is that God needs to be leading that. But giving your finances now while you're alive, so that using your money wisely while you're alive to see where it goes. At the end of the day, I don't care where the money
It
goes.
almost
I
leads
trust,
you-
I believe that God will put the money where it needs to go.
Yeah.
So that
That statement almost leads you to
Yeah.
a man that said, when he was alive, he said, being of sound mind, I spent all my money while I was alive.
yeah, yeah, and it didn't, yeah, that quote or whatever they put in there, that didn't sit well with him. I was kind of like,
No, I mean, I don't know, that's kind of out there in left field.
yeah, it's putting like almost control back on us, and I don't want to be like once again it's going back to I'm in control, because that goes back to the tithe. Well, I'm not going to tithe this week because I don't want that money going to them or this Blue Mountain Academy. I want to go to this school. I want to go to.
Right.
Just trust that God has a plan, and that money will go where it needs to go, and have that faith.
Well, I guess we should move on to Thursday, spiritual legacy. What does that have in store for us? A whole lot of text there under the question. I got the central point in them all is text and the impact of what we would do with whatever material means God has blessed us with. Well, if we have children, and most of us did, there's a few who don't, and even though they are our legacy, and even though they are of the age of accountability in most cases now, I'm preaching to the choir again, and they have their own family,
we should take care of their needs immediately after we dispense what is rightfully God's. Right? And our will should state that. And unfortunately, a lot of us don't. I mean, we think that we have enough of honesty in the family to say, you know, this should go there and this should go there. But have you ever seen a family fight over an inheritance? You know, it's cruel and inhumane.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that. We experienced it, millions of dollars in an account that's supposed to be split up between family, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden goes to one account and
People show their real face.
they show, yeah, exactly.
No.
It's interesting to see that aspect.
I'm thinking back, my parents, my mother outlived my father. And she sold the farm to my nephew while she was still alive. And then when she died, of course, I found her one Thursday evening. But what I got out of the estate was, well, I think it's like about $40,000. I mean, it was just enough for me to pay the house off. You know, what I owed in the mortgage. I mean, they weren't rich by any stretch of the imagination. They had land, but, you know, that had already been sold for a pittance
Yeah.
of what it would,
Pennies on the dollar.
what it would be today. I mean, they had like 40 acres, you know, farmland. And I think it was just recently, part of it was recently sold. The part that my father acquired to add to his farmland, that part across the road was sold for, I think it was like $2 million.
Wow.
So, I mean, you know,
Snacking yourself now.
yeah, I mean, had my mother known, and of course, we had no objection to, not much back then, to what was going on, as long as she was happy with it. That was the important thing.
You know, another thing too, Bob, we need to think about in Revelation 18, it talks about the merchant's weep. You know, looking at the demise of the beast power and
Yeah.
it's, you know, that money is not the answer. If you don't have salvation, you've got nothing.
Yeah. And when we talk about nursing homes, if you don't have $500,000
Oh, yeah.
in savings, you know,
Forget about it.
forget about it. Yeah. Well, where do we go from here? Friday's lesson, that was the first bell. I guess everything is the Lord's anyhow. You know, we take that mentality into consideration, and He will bless us as He sees fit. He says, "For every beast of the forest is mine; the cattle upon 1,000 hills are His. I know all the fowls of the mountains and the wild beasts of the field are mine." So it's all His to start with, and He gives us the ability to get wealth, to get resources. And you know, I guess I was kind of fortunate, but I was looking back. I was steered by the Holy Spirit as I went into the workplace, because there was things that happened that I didn't recognize at the time. But I look back on that and say, this was the providence of God. I mean, when you think about it, I was called to Letterkenny to be a clerk typist. And I went for the interview. There was 4 or 5 other women that were called and did not appear. Why didn't they appear? You know, if a woman would have showed up, they would have hired her over me for an administrative job. I mean, there's no two ways about it. I know that for a fact.
You look ugly in a skirt.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't about to sit on anybody's lap, you know, to get ahead. So, you know, that's providence in action there. Because I was hired. It was a temporary job at the time. And then this head of the personnel office, he saw in me what he was as a youth. He was a court stenographer in his youth. And he saw in me as a protege. You know, and he said, "Why don't you take the clerk steno test?" Which I did, and I passed that. And then he put me in when his secretary went on maternity leave to take her position. So that was all providential. The rest of the workforce there, they were all men. And they said, "Oh, no, you need to get rid of him." Well, we know why.
because they wanted a woman in that job. That's obvious. But, well, you know, I've motivated too long here. Motivated.
A lot of decisions that happen like that God works out. We may get upset by things and not realize. I always tell the kids when we're heading to school, so they're like, oh, a bus is in front of us, or oh, there's a tractor in front of us. I'm like, well, we never know. That 5-minute delay may stop us from getting.
That's a sore point with me, Will.
Yeah.
These tractors with the honey wagons.
Oh yeah, the honey wagon. Yes.
They go hundreds of miles away from their main farm to spread this stuff on the field, and it becomes a nuisance on the highways.
Yes, it does. But I always thought about the delay. You never know what was going to happen on the outside. I've seen accidents happen. I thought that could have been us.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Well, if we take nothing away from this lesson, I want you to know that life is divided in three main phases. The learning years, which, you know, we all know what that is. You learn to read, write, spell, and, you know, do other things. And then there's the earning years. In my case, I was fortunate enough to work about 60 years. You know, when I add it all up, it was about 60 years, which I, you know, just recently retired a year or so ago. And that's where you earn your money, you buy your home, you raise your children, you join a church, and you develop a closer relationship with Jesus, hopefully. The final segment of that is our returning years, and that's what this lesson is about. You know, return unto God what is rightfully His. And
We need to add teaching years in that as well. Teaching years. Because there's a time that we need to start teaching the younger youth, the younger people how to follow those footsteps and follow after Christ in different ways.
that would be part of our returning years, right? We teach others what we, through the school of hard knocks, what we've learned.
The inside story, I'm not sure if anyone got to read that or not, was Simo. I'm not going to even try to remember his last name, but that guy on the train and stuff like that. Just the little moments, like walking around the lake, people tanning, and I wouldn't even think about possibly going up to somebody and saying, "Hey, like, what do you think about religion?" But you see how God allowed that to occur, just stepping outside of that comfort zone, and it's just it's nice seeing those stories and how God worked. And like the last one, I think was on the train, stuff like that. So it's very interesting how God works. But yeah, take time to read that inside story if you didn't read it.
Would you close our session, Will?
Lord, thank you so much for another Sabbath, Lord, another Sabbath lesson. We thank you for all the thought that goes into these programs, Lord. Sometimes we may not understand them completely, Lord, but we ask that your Holy Spirit lead us and guide us through and give us the fruit and the meat that you want us to take from it, Lord, and allow us to adapt it to our own lives and pass it on to generations to come, Lord. We look forward to your speedy return, Lord, and we thank you for all that you do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Contrary to popular belief, I'm really shy.
And I'm an introvert.